This is From Destruction to Dignity with Janice Pons. Each week, Janice shares her wisdom to enlighten, educate, and advance the culture in America today. Janice Pons is a mother, author, and free thinker, and your host for our podcast this evening. Now let's join your host, Janice Pons.
Greetings, greetings, greetings. Come on in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Janice Pons. I am the host on this podcast, From Destruction to Dignity, Clinical Perspective, Spiritual Truths. Listen, we're going to dive right in on this pathway that we've been on, flowing together as one, forming a more perfect union, understanding our nation and how it's supposed to work, and how we can flow together to make things better. Listen, speaking of which, I'm continuing to pray for the 265,900,000 working Americans who last year were struggling so hard. We've got to keep them covered in prayer. We've got to be supportive. We've got to be there for each other. That's a focus that I have. I really do, and I need your help. So, we already established that last year, almost 80% of the American people said the nation was going in the wrong direction. Yes. And we needed to do something different. We did. We had an election. We have a new leadership. We have new cabinet members in the executive branch. So we have a new leader. We know what's been at stake. And we are going in a different direction than what we had been going for previous years. So tonight, we're going to look at some things related to the dynamics that have been going on, flowing in our nation, related to our government, and why some lawmakers are having a hard time adjusting to the results of the election, which was won fair and square. Fair and square was won. So here's a question. Are they capable of being civil and making efforts to get along for the sake of unity and moving the country forward? If not, why not? Tonight, we're going to consider when is enough enough. From a clinical perspective, we're going to look at the power of de-escalation because things have escalated to the point that there's so much deception, so many lies going on. I can just go on and on. You can look at my Facebook page. I tend to capitalize on pointing out those things and addressing inconvenient truths. They're inconvenient for some people, but it will set them free if they will read, get out of their emotions, and look and see what's really going on. And so there's a lot of escalation going on, and civil, mature adults can handle these things. So, speaking of civil, mature adults and the need for that in leadership, let's go back and retrospectively look at some things together. How well do I remember in 2018 when Maxine Waters stated that Trump officials, those in his cabinet, should be dealt with in this manner. And I quote, she said, if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant or in a department store, in a gasoline station, you get out, you create a crowd around them, and you push back on them, and you tell them that they're not welcome anymore, anywhere. Oh, Maxine Waters called for President Trump to be impeached, and she was adamant about what she said about his supporters. Now, that was Jim Crow all over again, what she was talking about. Let's move forward. In February 2025, Congressman Robert Garcia from California doubled down on his provocative rhetoric, underscoring the need for, and he put it this way, forceful opposition to the Trump administration. What does that mean? As evidenced by what? You know my clinical mind. I always go as evidenced by what? What do you mean by forceful opposition? Democrats have a habit of threatening. I don't see that pattern too much with definitely Christian conservative constitutionalists. No, we don't threaten. But it's real easy to prove the historical perspective, from a historical perspective up to now, Democrats have a habit of threatening or excusing violence to achieve their political aims. Anybody remember the summer of 2020, businesses burnt to the ground. I can see the faces of those people who lost their lives, of those faces that I can see right now. And I've posted about this. I can remember 2 of those people that had some degree of accountability held regarding to their lives being snuffed out. So there's a habit of threatening, excusing violence to achieve what? Political aims. The Trump Department of Justice has made it clear that inciting rhetoric, particularly threats against public officials, will no longer be tolerated. The prospect of accountability for violent political rhetoric has Representative Robert Garcia, a Democrat of California, crying foul. He's crying foul now. He claimed weeks before a would-be assassin took aim at then presidential candidate Donald Trump. He said this. He said that if Donald Trump were reelected, that the Republican would destroy this country and our democracy. He has since then, Garcia has expanded the cast of characters in his provocative fantasy to include Elon Musk with threats. Among the Democratic lawmakers incensed over the efforts by the U.S. government Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, to streamline government operations and flush out fraud, he's insulted Musk. He did that back in February during a congressional hearing. Garcia said that Musk had usurped the powers and authority of the president. The president can utilize whomever he desires to help him get his job done. Now, this is what takes things to another level. Garcia said this: bring actual weapons to the bar fight. Later, he was talking to a CNN reporter. And he continued to attack Musk. I mean, it just makes me stop and go, wait a minute, what did he do? He continued to attack Musk. He says, I think Musk is harming the American public in an enormous way. He said, what I think is really going on, it's important that the American public wants us to bring actual weapons to the bar fight. This is an actual fight for democracy, for the future of our country. His suggestion that Americans should take up arms against the Trump administration prompted outrage and calls for accountability. Interim D.C. United States Attorney Ed Martin, he's a prosecutor. He said that the Department of Justice would prosecute threats against public officials under an initiative called Operation Whirlwind. Operation Whirlwind, do you think we need an Operation Whirlwind if physical harm is being threatened against our officials and against Americans? Martin reportedly sent a letter asking Garcia to clarify his statements, noting that his talk of using actual weapons in an actual fight for democracy sounded like a threat to Mr. Musk and government staff who work for him. We take threats against public officials very seriously. I remind you, and this is what Martin said, no one's above the law. So Garcia claimed in turn, he said that Martin's letter was threatening and evidently decided to lean hard into his fantasy, stating that we're living in a dangerous time and elected members of Congress must have the right to forcefully oppose the Trump administration. So the California Democrat went on to complain to Biden's former press secretary. he stated this. He said, it's crazy that they want to investigate me for essentially, listen what he said, using a metaphor. It was just a metaphor. And for taking on Elon Musk. See, they change in midstream. I remember Maxine Waters, she goes on and on with her threats and so forth and so on. And then I guess it was the first part of March, she was just saying, we don't know what they have on us. Well, we finding out, Miss Waters. We're going to find out what we have on you and others because we pay your salary, ma'am. You're on Capitol Hill working for us. We are your employers. There is accountability. And people have been running amok, getting $174,000 a year at a minimum and out of control, as they have been getting over on us like fat rats. Garcia went on to say, we've got to fight fire with fire. While Garcia set out for his denial tour, Martin reportedly also sent a letter to Chuck Schumer. This was, when he was threatening the U.S. Supreme Court justices, Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh. Y'all remember that? When he was outside the high court in 2020, and when he said this is what Chuck Schumer said. As my mama, my 101-year-old mama says, I'm just telling you what they told me. And this is what Chuck Schumer told us. You have released the whirlwind and you will pay the price. What did he mean? He says, you won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions. Wow. So he was talking to two of the justices on the Supreme Court. Thank you for letting us know where you were coming from. Time is of the essence, wrote Martin. This is the one that's holding these people accountable. When he wrote to Schumer, he said, your cooperation is more important than ever to complete this inquiry before any action is taken. He said, I remind you, no one is above the law. Thank God. Martin apparently bold-faced. He said, no one is above the law in the letter he sent to Schumer, possibly because Schumer has repeatedly used the phrase, including when he criticized the Supreme Court over its decision in Trump versus the United States. Censor. C-E-N-S-U-R-E. What is that? Can someone in Congress be censored? In the House of Representatives, censor is essentially a form of public humiliation carried out on the House floor. Oh yeah, there's something called accountability. Heretofore, it hadn't been used too much, but censor is essentially a form of public humiliation carried out on the House floor as the Speaker of the House reads out a resolution rebuking a member for a specified misconduct that member must stand in the House well and listen to it. The earliest censor that we had, based upon my research, what I was able to see, was when Andrew Jackson was the only sitting president of the United States to be successfully censored. Although his censor was subsequently expunged from official records between, as we move forward. Now, looking back retrospectively, that was the only sitting president. But if we look between 2017 and 2020, there are several members of Congress introduced motions to censor Donald Trump for various controversies, including it being a possible substitute for impeachment during the Trump-Ukraine scandal. But none of those efforts were successful because it was determined there really wasn't a scandal. There really wasn't a Russian hoax. Now, What's been the latest censure? CENSURE. The House voted in March of this year, 2025, to censor Representative Al Green, a Texas Democrat who, in the first minute, I'll give him a break and say the first 2 minutes, but I think it might have been the first 40 seconds. He didn't hold back, didn't pause 1 minute in his rudeness. He interrupted President Trump's speech before a joint session of Congress, his State of the Union speech. In spite of being warned, I think about 4 times, to stop his early interruptions, he refused and got louder. He was escorted out. Get out. Escort him out. And that's exactly what happened. That's what should have happened. So they voted on that, and they had 10 Democrats to join in with the GOP trifecta. Well, the trifecta is the 3. You've got the White House. We've got both parts of the Senate. 10 Democrats joined in on that, and he was censored. Now, Al Green, is the 4th Democrat in 2 years to face a punishment from a GOP-led House, joining Adam Schiff of California, Rashida Tlaib of Michigan, and Jamal Bowman of New York. Now, on December 8th, 2023, the U.S. House of Representatives voted to censor Jamal Bowman, New York Democrat, in a 214 to 191 vote. What did he do? He pulled an alarm, and he was seen on a video at a door. He came to the door, and he pulled the alarm. Now, this is what he claimed. He said, listen to this, guys. I thought that the alarm, listen to this. I thought that the alarm would open the door. I thought the alarm would open the door. That doesn't even make logical sense. But it led to, on October 30th, Representative Bowman pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor count, and he was fined $1,000. These are the types of behaviors that warrant accountability. How do we remove someone from Congress? Is it even possible? The U.S. Constitution expressly grants each House of Congress the power to punish its members for disorderly behavior, and with the concurrence of 2/3, expel a member. Expulsion is a process by which a House of Congress removes one of its members after the member has been duly elected and seated. All of these dynamics are real and warrant us considering when is enough enough. What Al Green did, it was enough is enough. Maxine Waters has exceeded enough is enough. Oh yeah, boisterous, loud, talking about keeping people from going and department stores, getting gas, and eating in restaurants. Enough is enough. This provokes a lot of thought. Now, the name of this podcast is From Destruction to Dignity, Clinical Perspective, Spiritual Truths. All that we just went through, that we're just kind of dissecting and talking out loud about, that's destruction, chaos, keeping an uproar going. That's destruction. We want to support each other, guys, to get to a point where we get to dignity. We're a great people. We the people are great. How can we get there? How can we go from destruction to dignity? There's some clinical perspectives that quite possibly tie into it, and that definitely are spiritual truths that dovetail with it as well. So let's look at that. From a clinical perspective, we're going to consider how do we embrace the power of de-escalation? When do we need to de-escalate? What would happen if we were in a position to de-escalate a situation, maintain a calm demeanor, actively listen to the other person by showing genuine concern and empathy, using non-judgmental language, respect their personal space, and avoid escalating behaviors like arguing or making threats while we try to understand their perspective and focus on finding a solution together? What would happen? My motto on social media is, what would happen if we talk to and with each other versus at each other? We might become a powerhouse of a nation of solution-focused problem solvers. And my clinical perspective just throws and sprinkles things out for our consideration that possibly could be considered to help us get there. Now, when we're talking about de-escalating a situation, there's some points to think about. What would happen if we stay calm and composed and speak in a soft, even tone and avoid raising our voices and using aggressive body language? What would happen? What would happen if we engage in active listening, where you pay full attention, make eye contact with people, give them your undivided attention, and use verbal cues like nodding to show you're listening? And active listening and reflective listening is when you repeat and say, wait a minute, so am I hearing you say? And you repeat what they said to you. They know that they have been heard. Yeah. What would happen if we show empathy and validation? Try to understand the other person's emotions and acknowledge their feelings without dismissing them. What would happen if we used I statements, expressing our own feelings and concerns without blaming other people, saying, I feel, wait a minute, when you said that, I heard what you said. But I'm feeling a little bit uneasy about that when you raise your voice. And what I prefer is that we talk in a civil manner, adult to adult. That's being assertive. The other things are being verbally aggressive, passive aggressive, physically aggressive, cussing, yelling. But we can be assertive. And staying away from, every time I turn around, you this and you that and you. It's going to make people defensive. What would happen? We're just kind of talking out loud here. What would happen if we maintain personal space, avoid getting too close or making threatening gestures? What would happen if we asked open-ended questions, encouraged the other person to explain their perspective and concerns, and listen to them? What would happen if we paraphrase and summarize, repeat back what you heard to ensure understanding and show you're actively listening, reflective listening? What would happen if we avoid arguing and taking sides, focus on finding common ground and a solution, not proving who's right, but let's just talk? We all know that sometimes things can escalate and get out of control and get totally out of hand. How do we know when we need to get help? Because sometimes things do escalate and it's like, wait a minute. This here, as my mama said, this here thing is getting out of control. I love my mama. She's so real. Oh my God, my mama, she just don't dress it up. She doesn't. And you know what? At 101, she shouldn't. And she was like, they need to get some help. I love her because she's raw and she's real. So when do we need to get help? When do we need to get help? Sometimes we're going to get in situations we need to get help. If the situation is escalating rapidly and becoming physically threatening, we may need to get some help. What about if you feel unsafe or unable to de-escalate the situation on your own? What about if the person is exhibiting signs of severe emotional distress or mental health crisis? Listen, let me say this about that. I've seen in Christian circles, people be in a full-blown mental health crisis, And people were talking about, we need to cast a demon out of them. We need to just we need to pray. We need to pray. And sometimes you need to get shared liability. That means at a minimum, you call 911. I was involved in a situation where they would had a man. They made a post, and I've talked about this before. They were talking about we've got a man in the pastor's office right now, and his blood pressure is 200 over 190, and we need to cast this alcohol demon out of him. I said, Lord have mercy. And I chimed in. I said, let me tell y'all something right now. You all better get shared liability, or you're going to be in hot water in the morning, because that man is at risk of going into a seizure, and he could die. Oh yeah, it's just that serious. He probably needs to be assessed medically, and he probably needs a medically supervised detox. And I prayed over and went on. Y'all got to do what you need to do. But everything going on is not somebody needing a demon cast out. Sometimes you need a medical intervention, and sometimes escalation can go on to the point that you need an intervention. Thank God I went the next day, and they had taken that man to the hospital. And they were like, oh, praise God. We got to the hospital and all the staff are Christian. Imagine that. Oh, yeah, we're everywhere. And we're skilled and we're trained and we know how to help people. Everybody has a role, and we got to come together. This is us forming a more perfect union, us flowing together as one. There are no big I's and little U's. It's all of us have a role. And at a minimum of bringing us to dignity, we can pray for one another. What have we looked at tonight? When is enough enough? When is enough enough? With all this escalation and threatening, and officials even threatening harm, interrupting, being rude. Are we being good examples? Are we being the light of the world? We are the light of the world. Greater is he that is in us than he that is in this wicked world. From a clinical perspective, we've looked at the power of de-escalation. Yeah, de-escalation is powerful. I've been in some volatile situations in mental health settings, and I was like, somebody got to step in and go. Well, and I've been in situations where I had to go. Whoa, hold on, sir. Wait, hold on. Tell me. And the Holy Spirit taught me how to do this in certain situations. I said, sir, what is it that you need right now? This man wasn't used to anybody asking him what he needed. No, he wasn't used to it. And a lot of people that are in compromised ways of life and thinking and flows, they're not used to people even being concerned and considerate of asking them what do they need. See, this is how we go from destruction to dignity. Clinical perspectives and spiritual truths. I want to know, what do you need right now? And in that particular situation, as he was getting ready to throw a chair through a window, he just looked at me like I was crazy. He said, what the F do you mean? I said, I want to know, what do you need right now, sir? Sir. Wasn't you see anybody calling him sir either. We got to respect one another. You mean something to me, my fellow Americans. Just how I treat people. And he said, I need somebody, and he said the F word, to listen to me. Oh, that's what you need right now? Yeah. Baby, I pulled up a chair and sat it in front of him. I told that mental health tech, get these other people out of this room right now. You okay, Miss Janice? You okay? I said, I'm fine. I set the chair in front of him. I said, sir, I respectfully ask you to put that chair down, please. Thank you for doing it. Thank you for putting the chair down. He looked at me like, what you thanking me for? Thank you so much. Destruction to dignity. I treated the man with dignity. He put the chair down. In 15 minutes, we had formulated a treatment plan to teach him how to manage his anger. He got to get to the core of those feelings, put a language to it, I'm going to tell you what, that man went on to become a leader on that unit. Left there totally changed. Listen, we're going somewhere, and it's expecting us when we get there. We've got to talk together. We have to reason. Come on, let us reason together. We're going somewhere. It's expecting us when we get there. I'm excited about it. Can you tell? I am working with some people. We're teaming up. We're serious. We're going. We're going to protect our children. We're going to empower we the people. I am so done with this always being offended by Trump. Y'all better start praying and get on this train with us, because we're going somewhere. It's expecting us when we get there, and it's a good place. Yes, it is. We're going to empower our children. We're going to protect our children. We're going to take care of the elderly. Yeah, the tax on tips where Social Security is not being taxed. That part that no Democrat voted for. Yeah, that part. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security benefits. So we're taking care of the disabled. We're taking care of the elderly. We're going somewhere. I love this stuff. It's expecting us when we get there. Y'all know I love that song by the Staple Singers. I know a place. Ain't nobody crying. Ain't nobody worried. Ain't no smiling faces. Lying to the races. And see, listen to me what they were saying in that song. There were no smiling faces because we were under so much trepidation and attack through the Democratic Party and their policies, through slavery, sharecropping, and Jim Crow. We're talking about history that's accurately told. And lying to the racists all the time, lying, and they're still doing it today. That's what this podcast was about. But listen, we calling that stuff out. It is the truth. Lying to the racists. It's going to stop. You know why? Because we're going to proclaim the truth right here. We're going to pray for our president. That's what this seal is here for. We're going to remember our flag. We're going to unite as one. We're going somewhere. It's expecting us when we get there. Listen, I appreciate you sharing the podcast. So many of you have. Oh my goodness. Thank you for your contribution to the podcast last year, growing 1,200%. I looked at the analytics on Buzzsprout. It's just being downloaded on the audio part. So this is, I'm excited. I'm so humble, so grateful. I appreciate you. I love you. I'm praying for you. I intercede for my podcast audience, my social media platform audience. I got your children covered. I got you covered. Why? You are my fellow Americans, and you are my brothers and sisters. Listen, I love you. I'll see you next week. Good night.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of From Destruction to Dignity with Janice Pons. Janice's mission is to provoke thought, bring awareness, and point people towards intervention when needed. As a reminder, this show is not therapy, but for educational purposes only. For more information, check out JanicePons.com or follow her on social media.
We are one power, strength is ours, liberty, been set free, education, affirmation, dedication, information, revelation.